Chair Dyke, we will let you get going. I know we probably still have a few folks coming in, but whenever you are ready, I think we can dive in.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Sharon. So we'll call the City of Gresham Budget Committee meeting number 1 to order. The time is, I have 6:02. We're going to start with a roll call of all committee members and staff in attendance. And Sharon Monahan, Budget and Finance Director, if you would be willing to walk us through that roll call, I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely. I am happy to do so. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Starting with members of the Budget Committee, I'm going to go through my list in alphabetical order by first name. So I'll give you a chance to be ready. If you could unmute yourself and confirm that your audio works and just say you're present, that would be great. Starting with Claire Leiter.
Present.
Thank you. And Chair Dave Dyke.
I'm here.
Councilor Dina Danucci.
You tricked me on that one. I am here.
Thank you. Councilor Eddie Morales. Don't see him yet on my list. Jan Baker.
Here.
Councilor Janine Gladfelter.
Here.
Councilor Mario Palmero. I do not see him yet on my screen yet either. Committee member Nick McWilliams, he is not here this evening. He did send his regrets. He unfortunately had a conflict that was in place prior to his being appointed to the committee. Member Rusty Allen.
I'm here.
Sue O'Halloran.
I'm here.
Councilor Sue Piazza. And I do not believe Councilor Piazza was going to be able to join us this evening. Teresa Shirky.
I'm here.
Mayor Travis Stovall.
I am here.
And Councilor Vincent Jones Dixon. I do not see him on my list either. We will want to make sure we are checking the attendee list to make sure nobody is over there as well. Starting with the staff that are in attendance tonight, starting with City Manager Nina Vetter.
Here.
And City Attorney Kevin McConnell.
Present.
Thank you. Deputy City Manager Corey Falls.
Here, I can see him on the screen.
Excellent. Assistant City Manager Eric Schmidt.
Here. Good evening, everybody.
And Assistant City Manager Steve Fenter.
I'm here too. Hey, everybody.
And Assistant City Manager Elizabeth Coffey.
Good evening. I'm here.
And Budget Manager Elizabeth McCann.
Good evening.
And our recording secretary for tonight is Cecile Turley.
Here.
And we are being supported with the Zoom process this evening by 2 other staff members, Ian Peterson.
Here.
And Tani Fagerberg.
Here.
And thank you all very much for being with us this evening. And we will keep track of if others are able to join later on. And with that, we can move on to the second item on the agenda. Thanks, Chair.
Perfect. Thanks, Sharon. Okay, so the next important task we have is to elect budget committee officers. So this will be a chair and I'm sorry, what's that? Sharon?
So you're jumping ahead to item 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip something? Yes. Thank you. Before we do that, we're going to review our ground rules and meeting protocols. And Sharon, I will ask you to do that as well.
Thanks, Chair. A couple quick things on the agenda review. Our primary purpose for tonight is to hear the city manager's budget message. There are a few other activities that are included in the agenda. Electing a chair and vice chair will be first up. We also will be holding the budget committee portion of the state shared revenue hearing. We will be allowing for public comment, and then we will be having a beginning discussion if desired by the committee. In terms of ground rules, unless the committee has something different you would like to do, our practice has been to agree to end no later than 9 p.m. unless an extension is approved by the committee. For public comment, we have typically followed a 3 minutes per person or organization with potentially up to a 20-minute total. We have approved the proposed budget as a whole entity, not a piece by piece action, but as a whole action. And at the end of tonight's meeting, we need to make sure that we recess until we have gotten to an approval action. We do not want to inadvertently close out the meeting process because that would restart the noticing process. So we want to be careful to recess the meeting rather than adjourn. And just in terms of meeting protocols, we are much more familiar with Zoom processes than we have been when we first had to do this a couple of years ago, but just a reminder to keep your microphones muted as much as possible and to try to use a raise hand feature if you are able to. With that, now we'll dive into your item number 3. Thanks, Chair.
Perfect.
Can I
Thanks,
jump in
Sharon.
real quick?
Please.
Just want to let you know that Vince, Councilor Jones Dixon couldn't find the link, so I've sent that to him. So he should be joining momentarily, I think.
Thanks, Councilor. I see he's joining now. So perfect. Before we move on to the election of the Budget Committee officer, were there any discussion topics on the kind of ground rules for tonight or our future meetings? They've served us well in the past, and I think we'll stick with them. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to elect a chair and a vice chair for tonight, and then the future meetings of this process as well. And after we elect the chair, I will hand off the this meeting to them. So we're going to open it up for nominations. Are there any nominations for chair? Sue.
I would nominate Rusty Allen for chair of the Budget Committee.
Excellent, thank you. Sue, Rusty, you've been nominated. I'm looking at our instructions here. I don't think I need a second. Rusty,
Chair,
how does that?
Chair Dyke?
Yes, sir.
Nominations do not need a second.
Okay, thank you. Rusty, is that something you'd be interested in serving?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Thank you. I promise it's a lot of fun. Are there any other nominations? Okay, let's take a vote to put Rusty in place as our committee chair. I think all in favor, raise your hand. And Sharon, I'll look to you to help keep us honest. Okay, and are there any opposed? Okay, I think that was unanimous. Thank you, Rusty, for being voluntold, I guess. I believe we also need to select a vice chair tonight as well to serve in case Rusty is unable to make it.
And
Sharon, do I
you do
keep
not
doing
have
that,
to do that. No,
Perfect.
Rusty gets to take over that honor. And Sue, you have your hand up still. Was that? Perfect. And Rusty, are you able to have the script handy and ready to dive in?
Yes. So are there any nominations for vice chair? Sue?
I will raise my hand for that, and I would like to nominate Claire Leiter for vice chair.
Okay. Claire, is that something that you'd be willing to serve as?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other nominations? Okay, then we have a nomination for Claire to be the Budget Committee Vice Chair. All those in favor, raise your hand.
I think that looks like everybody.
All those opposed, raise your hand. Okay, Claire, you've now have been elected as the Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Just on to number 4 now, Sharon. Okay, instructions for the public testimony. Community members who wish to speak or provide written comments were invited to sign up 24 hours prior to tonight's meeting with the city recorder, Susan Joy Wright. When we get to the appropriate item on the agenda, any committee members who have signed up to speak will be called on and you will be brought into the panel to speak. Please state your name for the record and observe the time limit of 3 minutes. Also be aware that there are 2 distinct comment periods. The first one will be for the state shared revenue hearing, and the second will be for the proposed budget overall. At this time, City Manager Nina Vetter will now begin the presentation of the budget message.
And Elizabeth McCann will be doing the screen share for this. So there we go. And I see that. And so Nina, whenever you are ready, it is up for you.
Thank you, Budget Committee. Sorry, I was having technical difficulties on my end. Thank you, Elizabeth, for helping me with the slides this evening. I am pleased to present our budget message and overview for tonight. First, I want to give a big thank you to our entire finance and budget team, all of our budget analysts who have worked so hard on this process, and all of our department heads and managers who have worked hard to develop 3-year operational plans, which we will discuss a bit later, as well as our leadership team for prioritizing our need, and last but not least, our City Council for supporting us with the allocation of crucial American Rescue Plan Act funds that has helped the city significantly over the last 9 months bridge our financial gap. Over the last 2 years, Gresham has faced great challenges. At the same time, both our organization and our community has proven to be resilient, and we have made quick adjustments and changes to respond to the changing community. Our city team has worked very hard with limited financial resources for years, and yet they still find a way of providing great service to our community every day. I am incredibly proud of the work that our team does and thankful for our City Council support over the last year as we work to address challenges together. Elizabeth, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. For many years, as you know, the city has navigated a difficult financial situation. At the core of our problem is an equitable property tax system that limits Gresham's rate to one of the lowest in the state and severely hampers our ability to fund our core services. To directly address this problem, the city is working on Imagine Gresham, which will develop both a strategic plan as well as a long-term financial plan. The long-term financial plan that's underway will put the city in a position to be successful in providing the services our community asks for today and the services that our community dreams of for the future of Gresham. This work is critical to ensuring that we're building the city's finances in a way that supports the dreams of our community and that is also achievable and realistic. As a refresher on what our property tax looks like, these 2 graphics that you can find in our budget and brief on our website do a great job of illustrating the limited property tax revenue that we have as a community. You can see on the right that Gresham is second to last over Fairview in terms of property tax. And you can see on the left side that someone who is paying property tax provides a significantly more amount of funds to Multnomah County and the local school district over actually to the city of Gresham. We also wanted to provide tonight an overview of our fund balance and the history of our fund balance for the general fund and PFP. While the development of our long-term plan is underway, we have done our best to develop a budget for next year that recognizes our limited financial resources. As you can see in this picture here, many years ago, not really that long ago, several years ago, the city had to dip significantly into our fund balance. In fiscal year 2010-11 and 11-12, we're at about $7 to $8 million in fund balance, which is only 9% of our annual budget which is significantly below what our Government Finance Officers Association recommendation is. You will notice over the last few years, we have made significant progress in ensuring that we had a more stable and reliable fund balance. This has been thanks to several incidents and situations that have occurred, some one-time revenue that has come in over budget. And also it should be noted that the increase in our fund balance over the last few years has also occurred because we have made cuts and reductions to some services and personnel in some areas. So to position the city best to serve our community, we have developed a budget that recognizes the need for additional internal facing staff to support the work of our team while limiting the impact on our fund balance. We also recognize that the one-time infusion of federal dollars through the American Rescue Plan Act has allowed the city to fund more than $4 million in urgent public safety needs, as well as other needs. Additionally, we were able to stabilize revenues and minimize the impact of our fund balance due to the temporary extension of the Police, Fire, and Parks Free approved by City Council in 2021, as well as additional funds from the American Rescue Plan Act. As you can see here in this graphic, we are very fortunate to have the American Rescue Plan Act funds help us stabilize our organization this year. Our departments have worked very hard over the last few months to develop 3-year operational plans to ensure that we have the resources we need to just provide the services that we're trying to provide today. What you will see in our proposed 2022-2023 budget is essentially implementing year 1 of these key operational plans. It increases our resources and staffing to some level that we can afford to ensure that we continue to provide services. And then we recognize at the same time we are undergoing and getting close to finishing our very crucial long-term financial sustainability plan. Again, to work towards a more stable organization, the city has built 3-year operational plans for every service area, outlining exactly what resource needs every department has to keep running, to provide the current level of service and retain employees. Since the city's revenues are limited, we're unable to fund all of the needs included in the 3-year operational plans. But as I discussed, this budget does address most of the first-year operational needs in this plan. While some areas of the city have received additional support and staffing over the last few years, including public safety and homelessness, there are many areas of the city that are operating with same or fewer staff than they've had before. So in our proposed 2022-2023 budget, we provide 28.6 additional positions that are most critical to ensuring that we can continue to operate. These additional positions include direct community service and support of all of the city's departments, including police, fire, parks and recreation, and more. Our proposed 2022-2023 budget has 4 key strategies. As we discussed, we are very fortunate to be able to leverage the American Rescue Plan Act funds to stabilize and fund our most urgent needs. Secondly, we are taking advantage of the one-time additional revenue. Third, we are going to support our internal staff needs. And fourth, make strategic changes. As we discussed, the American Rescue Plan Act funds have been crucial to our organization. They're not part of our annual budget process, but it's really important to recognize that the impact that they've had. In 2021, the city received $12.7 million. We will receive a second allocation of the same amount later into this year in 2022. The community provided us with feedback on how they'd like us to spend these funds. Our city council adopted principles to guide decisions. And eventually our city council approved the use of these funds for these strategic, timely, and urgent investments that you see here on this screen. To ensure that the city did not need to make any cuts to services or personnel, the city needed additional revenue for the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. As mentioned, our city council took 2 significant actions to make sure this could happen. The one-time extension of the Police, Fire, and Parks fee increase and dedicating a portion of American Rescue Plan Act funds towards organizational stability. Without these 2 actions, the city would have been forced to decrease services or look at cuts to the budget. To ensure that the city could fund additional critical staffing needs while also minimizing the draw on our critical fund balance, we have included a temporary 1-year deferral of contribution from the general fund to the equipment replacement fund. At the end of each year, as you all know, the city has natural unspent dollars that happen from turnover, change in events, change in our environment. Recognizing this, we've proposed deferring the equipment replacement fund contribution in the budget itself. But we fully expect that the general fund will very likely be able to make this contribution at the end of the year. However, even if the city has no unspent funds at the end of the year, the equipment replacement fund has a significant fund balance, and therefore we could accommodate a 1-year loss of contribution entirely while still being able to fund the needed equipment. As you can see in this graphic of our general fund forecast from next year's budget and beyond, we still have work to do. We need our long-term financial plan. We believe that our proposed 2022-2023 budget puts us on a path towards more investment in staffing crucial areas of our city while we still attempt to minimize the impact on our fund balance to the best of our ability. I'm tremendously proud of the dedication and creativity of our budget staff who've worked together to build this budget. I'm grateful for the resiliency of our directors, our managers, and our staff for developing these 3-year operational plans and for managing within their limited budgets. We are at an important part in our community and our city, important point in our community and our city. And as we move forward with this proposed budget and with our long-term financial plan and strategic plan, we have to do it together. We cannot do this alone. We all need to work together as a community and an organization to build a brighter future. Thank you. And now I will turn it over to myself to continue with our department overviews. You are joined here tonight with members of our executive team, who I'm very thankful for, who will be going through a quick overview of our departments. I will start and kick us off with an overview of the city manager's office. As you can see here, our office really is crucial in providing leadership to our organization, to facilitate policymaking of our elected officials, and also to make sure that we are supporting the rest of the organization to be as successful as possible. You'll see on this slide, we recognize the staff that we have in our organization, in our department, and our major programs and initiatives. We ensure that our council priorities are implemented. We are excited that our office has been able to lead and support our critical strategic plan. Again, we provide a leadership direction and support to our elected officials. We also support the city's legislative agenda, and we support city council advisory committees. And with that, now I actually do get to turn it over to our city attorney. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Chair Allen, members of the Budget Committee, Kevin McConnell, City Attorney's Office. In accordance with Article 2.76 of the Gresham Revised Code, the City Attorney's Office diligently works to provide high-quality, timely, and cost-effective legal and risk management services. We are currently comprised of a city attorney, deputy city attorney, 2 senior assistant city attorneys, legal services manager, paralegal, risk manager, risk management specialist, and an administrative assistant. We are currently in the process of hiring an assistant city attorney. We have 2 funds, and funding is generated through both internal service and payroll charges. The Workers' Comp Liability Management Fund is approximately $650,000 higher than what was appropriated last budget cycle. Risk Management has an actuarial study done at the end of each fiscal year for both subfunds. These studies are the basis for projected claim costs budgeted for the following fiscal year. The city is self-insured for workers' compensation costs, with an excess policy for severe claims. The city is fully insured for liability claims. Insurance renewal costs are projected. Risk management is currently completing renewal application. And why for the $650,000 extra? the insurance market has hardened this year, making certain lines of coverage much more expensive, such as workers' comp, cyber, and property coverage. Besides providing legal advice to the council, city departments, and advisory bodies, reviewing contracts and preparing ordinances and resolution, this office is currently staffing council meetings, the Charter Review Committee and its subcommittee, as well as the Planning Commission, Design Commission, and Coordinating Committee. We are also overseeing workplace investigations and assisting city staff in determining whether it would be feasible to reestablish a municipal court within the city of Gresham. Thank you very much. I will now turn the presentation over to Deputy City Manager Corey Falls.
Thank you, Kevin. Chair Allen, Budget Committee members, it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. My name is Corey Falls. I'm the Deputy City Manager. I oversee our safety and personnel, so I'll be talking about our fire and emergency services, our police, our human resources, emergency management, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. As many of you know, the mission of the Gresham Fire and Emergency Services is to protect lives, property, and the environment by responding to fire, medical, and rescue emergencies while providing education and prevention services. Gresham Fire and Emergency Services is staffed by 118.75 full-time employees and limited term employees. And after I talk about police and fire, I'll elaborate a little more on staffing. But it's a general fund budget of approximately $31,900. The programs and initiatives that we're looking into for the next budget year is, number one, just to recruit and retain qualified firefighters. Identify immediate short-term funding to maintain appropriate staffing and training. Complete our standards of cover review, which essentially is an organizational review by an outside consultant that will look at facilities and response times and where our stations are located and calls for service. That'll be a good report for us to have moving forward. And then focus on firefighter wellness, as their wellness is a priority to us in that demanding job. Next was our police department. And the mission of the police department is the Gresham Police Department is committed to providing high-level service through continued community engagement that seeks to improve the quality of life and maintain the safety of our residents, recognizing that our employees are a critical resource in this commitment to our community. We will strive to ensure that our officers are highly trained, ethically sound professionals who are focused on enhancing the needs of the community. Total staffing for our police department is 160 full-time employees. This is also a general fund budget of approximately $44,300,000. Some of the major programs and initiatives within our police department are recruit and retain qualified officers, reduce gun violence, focus on officer wellness, and implement the Barry Dunn recommendations, and which will develop a strategic plan. Before you move to the next slide, I just want to pause here for a second and focus on our public safety for a moment and really reiterate. I'm not going to, we've heard a lot over the last couple of days about a lot of the community input and how community safety policing is a priority within our community. What I'm going to tell you though is it's a difficulty that you all face, and it's not your fault, but public safety budget does not have a lot of wiggle room. And when I say that, there's an assumption that we're at full staffing. Even being at full staffing with our police and fire, it's very difficult to provide the level of service that we want to. The reason why I say there's no wiggle room and talk about this is because there's usually a vacancy rate within our police and fire. So we're always working with a deficit, kind of behind the curve. And you're asked, well, why is there vacancy rates? Well, there's a lot that goes on within police and fire professionals. One is the length of time to hire them. And on the police side, you have to wait for the academies to open up sometimes. On the fire, if you do academies, that is a lot also. And if you do more than one during the year, that is very taxing. So that takes a lot of time. It's a demanding job. And there's a lot of reasons for people to be out, whether it's mandated training, which takes a toll on our police and firefighters, whether it's workers' comp, family, you name it. There's a lot of impact there. So I just want to reiterate that the importance of some immediate staffing for our police and fire. Moving on to our human resources department. This is staffed with 10 employees, and that's up from last year. We're adding 2. So this year's budget reflects 2 additional positions. One is an employee and labor relations position that is much needed within our HR department. The other is an HR analyst that will specifically help us recruit public safety professionals. And that is a much needed position as well, as we are trying to increase the amount of police officers and firefighters that we have. Also, we want to respond to the changing employee landscape. COVID changed our world, obviously, so we are a remote workforce now. The training and the retention and hiring employees is taking a toll. So just to continue to monitor that. And lastly, just employee and health well-being. I think you can kind of see that as a theme across the board now with employee wellness. That is a priority and an importance to our organization and something we want to maintain and value. Next is our emergency management, and it's staffed by 1 full-time employee with the admin services budget of approximately $275,000. Our major programs and initiatives for emergency management are to continue to partner with our community organizations, look into virtual emergency operations center, which we learned from the pandemic that we can do some of these things in a virtual world, and just to continue to monitor the pandemic while continually working with other outside agencies as it pertains to emergency management, our public health, and whatever other resources within the state that we need to maintain. Lastly, our diversity, equity, and inclusion program. Our mission of this is to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion within the city of Gresham's work environment, government, and civil life by promoting fair treatment, inclusive access, and equitable opportunities for employment, services, and business. And I'm happy to say that this year we hired Denise Johnson, our new diversity, equity, and inclusion manager. And that budget is within our city manager's office. The major programs and initiatives that Denise will be working on is to carry out some of the recommendations that we had from the work that Dr. Mason did that our council approved last summer. And Denise has been working diligently on that. We're establishing a steering committee. We're working on a charter for that steering committee. Identifying DEI program outcomes as it pertains to our strategic plan, which will include some related strategies, activities, some metrics that we'll look at, accountabilities. Denise is also developing a DEI communication plan for our organization. And lastly, the implementation of a DEI lens tool that will help us within our organization across the board as we look at services, training, whatever it is with a DEI lens. And now we'll turn it over to Assistant City Manager Schmidt. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey, and good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the Budget Committee. My name is Eric Schmidt, and I'm one of your Assistant City Managers. I will now provide a high-level budgetary overview for the service areas within my portfolio, which includes economic and development services, urban design and planning, community services, youth services, housing services, and urban renewal. These 6 areas, which we refer to as the portfolio of community development and livability, provide many of the forward-facing community services. Generally, our mission that encompasses this breadth of work is to create forward-thinking, equitable, and efficient solutions and partnerships that positively impact quality of life for Gresham community members through quality development, urban renewal, housing options, access to transportation, livability through code regulation, business services, job creation, positive and engaging outlets for youth and services, and also services for underserved and vulnerable populations. As we go through the presentation, I'll share with you some more details about each service area. Economic and Development Services, which is overseen by Shannon Stady, includes economic development, which now includes industrial and commercial and mixed use, as well as small business support. This department also includes the Building Division and Permit Center, which covers issuance of all development-related permits and building plan review and inspections for the city of Gresham, as well as the cities of Wood Village, Troutdale, and Fairview, and an unincorporated East Multnomah County through some long-established intergovernmental agreements, or IGAs. For fiscal year 22-23, Economic and Development Services priorities include 3 major program areas. For economic development, in line with our new approach to include commercial along with traded sector, we support all businesses in Gresham to ensure that they can grow and thrive, connecting them with external resources and programs, assisting with real estate needs, workforce development issues, and managing current development incentive programs, including potential expansion of the city's vertical housing development program. For our small business center, this includes continuing to aid Gresham's small business community through one-on-one assistance to navigate the city's permitting and licensing process and connecting them with external partners and resources for technical assistance. And for building permits and plan reviews and inspections, this includes providing accessible and partner-driven development permitting assistance and processing to ensure our customers' success in meeting their project goals. Next is urban design and planning, which is overseen by David Berniker, and this includes 2 primary divisions: long range, or also referred to as comprehensive planning, which focuses on strategic long-term land use plans and policies that shape our city's development and establish goals for its future, and also development planning, which focuses primarily on reviewing and processing land use permits for the built environment. Urban design and planning is responsible for implementing and processing land use codes and design standards that enhance the vitality and safety of neighborhoods by expanding economic development potential and improving design throughout the community, both through current development and long-range planning to support the future land use policies and ultimately shape the future of the city. Major projects within urban design and planning include continued work on the One Gresham initiative, housing development and housing affordability, and continued work on Pleasant Valley and Springwater. All of these priorities work synergistically to facilitate development that contributes to city livability by building connections in our community through parks and recreation, employment and housing, by supporting the economic success and cultural heritage, and protecting the natural environment and preserving the places that residents care about most. Our Community Services Division, overseen by Jessica Harper, focuses on 3 primary areas: code compliance, which enhances Gresham's livability by addressing code violations, including abandoned vehicles, overgrown vegetation, graffiti, and debris, garbage, and junk types of issues. Homeless services, which connects Gresham community members experiencing chronic homelessness with shelter, housing, and other resources, including food, transportation, and identification services. And lastly, mediation, which resolves conflicts involving neighbors, families, and businesses. The program also conducts conflict management workshops to increase the skills of community members and city staff. These programs work together to collectively provide quality of life, livability, and a productive means to support members of our community. The Youth Services Division, overseen by Iman Gassemi, creates positive opportunities for youth, including recreation, mentoring, education, and other support services. Still in its formative stages, we are looking for this division to creatively and effectively support the youth of Gresham through various programming and service options, which may include youth mentoring, internships, recreational, learning, and other supportive services. It will build and expand upon some of our well-known successful collaborations, namely Summer Kids in the Park, Late Night Basketball, Sunday Futsal, and Family of Friends Mentoring. And we anticipate easily serving hundreds of youth annually. It also includes the Youth Violence Prevention Program that brings together multiple culturally specific community-based organizations to provide street-level outreach, positive mentoring, community engagement opportunities, and recreational activities for youth. Along with key staff, this program was put together thanks to the hard work of our state representatives, state senators, and our Gresham City Council. Additionally, the Youth Advisory Council is a collection of youth leaders who will work together for more equitable opportunities through youth-led advocacy, education, and building partnerships between the community and schools. These areas offer an overall support mechanism and work together to encourage engagement and provide healthy outlets to help support a positive path forward for youth in our city. The Housing Services Division, which is overseen by Ashley Miller, includes our rental housing inspection program, our federal CDBG and home programs, the oversight of the Metro Housing Bond, oversight of our short-term rental program, as well as general housing policy. For fiscal year 22-23, housing services priorities align with those of the council work plan related to housing and houselessness and include continued engagement on the Metro Housing Bond, which will most likely lead to 1 to 2 public solicitations for the remaining funding. It also includes annual administration of our Gresham's federal home and CDBG funding, along with Gresham's one-time allocation of home ARP funding tied to the 2021 American Rescue Plan Act. Our rental housing inspection program has resumed regular services, which includes interior inspections after they were temporarily altered due to COVID. The program will explore the development of additional ways to support the habitability needs and tenant and owner resources in the next year in conjunction with the ARPA-funded Housing Resources Coordinator position. Finally is Urban Renewal, which is overseen by Emily Bauer, the Executive Director of the district. As you may know, the Gresham Redevelopment Commission contracts with the city for operations of the Urban Renewal District. This evening, I am covering the city side of the proposed budget, and on May 10th, the Gresham Redevelopment Budget Committee will meet to review and recommend approval for the Gresham Redevelopment Commission budget. Established in 2003 by a citywide vote, Urban Renewal encourages private investment by strategically partnering with businesses and property owners to create jobs, stimulate investment, and improve property values. In terms of major projects and initiatives, the Urban Renewal Plan seeks to improve the Rockwood Town Center, industrial and commercial areas by promoting quality development that supports access, amenities, recreation, jobs, and quality of life. Anticipated capital improvement projects for fiscal year 22-23 include work on the downtown Rockwood or the Catalyst site, Sandy Boulevard improvements, Stark Street property redevelopment, the Sunrise site, and the Rockwood Urban Plaza. As you may know, there is a measure on the May election that is requesting voter approval for a 6-year extension of the current district. While we await the outcome, Urban Renewal staff will continue department operations, property maintenance, community engagement, and moving the capital improvement projects forward. Once we know the outcome of the election, additional discussions will occur with council and the Gresham Redevelopment Commission in the coming months related to the future of the Urban Renewal District. At this point, that concludes my presentation, and I will now turn it over to Steve Fancher. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And hello, everybody. So I'm Assistant City Manager Steve Fancher. I'm here to talk about the Department of Environmental Services, which also includes Parks and Recreation and Fleet and Facilities. Our mission is to meet the essential needs of the community by efficiently and equitably providing clean water, safe transportation, waste disposal, stormwater management, parks and recreation, and other core public services while protecting and enhancing the environment. Starting with drinking water, the drinking water program plans and provides safe, reliable water to the community through operations and maintenance, capital improvements, protection and conservation of the public drinking water system. We have over 70,000 customers. You may know, but the Rockwood Water People's Utility District serves a portion of Gresham residents, mostly the north and western portions. Key issues and work plan for fiscal year 2022-23 include implementation of the joint groundwater development plan in partnership with Rockwood Water PUD as part of the Cascade Groundwater Alliance. This is to develop an independent water supply system for Gresham customers by 2026. We're also constantly working on our aging water infrastructure, upgrading the system and replacing pipes as needed. We use a system called asset management to do this, to make sure that we're replacing those pipes at just the right time, not too early and not too late. We also work on seismic resiliency projects, and a lot of these are highly subsidized by external grant funding sources. Transitioning now to our wastewater utility. The wastewater program provides planning and design and operations and maintenance, management and capital improvements to the city's wastewater collection and treatment facilities. The treatment plant along Sandy Boulevard in the north of Gresham provides treatment to approximately 13 million gallons of sewage per day, and we serve over 119,000 customers within the cities of Gresham, Wood Village, Fairview, and portions of Portland. The plant is, you may know, net zero in that we produce as much energy as we use. And this was one of one of the first in the United States. Key issues and projects for fiscal year 22-23 include, as with all of the water utilities, asset management, making sure we're maintaining our system at just the right point in time to be the most efficient and cost effective we can. And we're continuing treatment plant upgrades to comply with the city's environmental permits. And that also often includes seismic evaluation or projects that are highly subsidized by outside external grant funding sources. Stormwater and natural resources, or our watershed division. This program provides flood protection through continual improvement and maintenance of the city's stormwater system, and works to monitor and improve the water quality and habitat of 75 miles of streams and almost 700 acres of riparian corridors to meet state and federal water quality and Endangered Species Act regulations. Gresham's stormwater system handles over 4 billion gallons of water each year and protects water quality under Clean Water Act and Safe Drinking Water Act regulations. Some of the key issues and projects for this year include, like the others, continual development of their asset management program. The stormwater utility is a little bit behind the wastewater and water utilities with asset management, but they're quickly catching up, TVing the pipe system and assessing the condition as they go. They're also implementing programs to build and maintain green infrastructure. So these are primarily rain gardens and swales and ponds that you might see around the city. These green infrastructure projects, they clean the stormwater runoff before it goes into the creeks and rivers. It's also a requirement of the city's stormwater permit with the state that we implement these programs. We're also updating the city's outdated stormwater infrastructure plans and adopting, hopefully this year, the new natural resources plan for the city. Transportation. The transportation program plans and designs and constructs, operates and maintains the transportation system that includes over 900 lane miles of streets, 140 electronic traffic control devices, a lot of medians and traffic signs and safety features like the flashing crosswalks that you see around the city. Key issues in the plan for 22-23 include continuing the Hitting the Streets or local street reconstruction program. We're now in year 5 of 6. This was a program enacted by the council to rebuild all of the city's failed local streets, bringing the livability and safety of those streets up dramatically. We're also enhancing the city's mobility and safety for pedestrians and bicyclists, but doing a lot of curb ramp work with the Hitting the Streets project to do the corner ramps for meeting Americans with Disability Act requirements and making mobility better for people. We continue our emphasis on operation and maintenance, and we do install new RRFBs or rectangular rapid flashing beacons. Those are the flashing crosswalks. We have some larger projects, again, to enhance safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, and improve vehicular capacity along some of our major corridors like Hogan Division, Cleveland, and the 223rd and Stark intersection. Solid waste and sustainability. The Solid Waste and Sustainability Program manages the city's solid waste and recycling collection system and provides waste reduction and recycling information and assistance to Gresham residents, businesses, and schools in Gresham and Wood Village. The program develops and implements programs and policies that prevent waste, conserve resources, and promote energy efficiency, renewable energy, sustainable food, greenhouse gas reduction, and pollution prevention. The program regulates the city's 5 private hauling companies and sets collection service standards and rates, and provides data to City Council for use in setting those rates. Key issues for next year include continued education and outreach with customers and schools, waste prevention, and also working on the city's first community-wide climate action plan. Infrastructure development services. This program includes construction inspection services, which inspect all public infrastructure built with public and private projects. Development engineering, which reviews and approves design and construction of the plans of these infrastructures, and land surveying services for the city's capital projects. You may know this, you may not, but a majority of the city's public infrastructure systems were built by private development projects over the years. Next slide, please. Parks and Recreation. Gresham Parks maintains over 300 acres of developed active parks at 54 sites throughout the city, 8 miles of trails, and is the community steward for over 800 acres of natural areas. The division coordinates with community volunteers when available on maintenance and operation related activities. Park supports the administration of rec programs and a field and shelter reservation system. Some of the key programs and initiatives for this next year, again, ongoing maintenance to keep these parks safe and beautiful for the community. We're halfway through the effort of the Parks and Recreation Community Advisory Group, which has been a really amazing effort, I think. Very diverse, large group. We have about 30 individuals that are participating to help, first of all, identify all of the public and private assets and programs that are available out there, and putting this information in a place that can make it much easier for our community members to access. Also identifying the gaps that are desired to fulfill a vibrant and full Parks and Rec system, to bring those to City Council for consideration for funding in the future. We're also working on an update to a funding feasibility study, and just got good news from the Trust for Public Lands that they're going to do that work with us for free. We're also looking at updating the city's Parks and Recreation Master Plan and continuing to develop the recreation program that was really kickstarted again last year with $300,000 in operating funds. This money is primarily going to partnerships with community-based organizations and other community organizations that provide recreation to enhance access to all Gresham customers. We also oversee the city's fleet and facilities groups, and fleet and facilities maintain the city's vehicles and equipment, including fire apparatus and heavy machinery, what we call yellow iron at operations, in all of the city's buildings and parking lots. Major initiatives for this year include helping to transition the city's workforce to post-COVID locations and accommodate new and changing needs associated with hybrid work. Also, we systematically electrify portions of the city's fleet and add charging infrastructure to reduce reliance on fossil fuels and reduce the city's greenhouse gas emissions. That concludes my portion of the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth Coffey.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening, Chair Allen and members of the Budget Committee. Thank you for hanging in there with us as we continue to give you a lot of information. I'm going over the last few service areas, and then I'll be turning it over to our budget manager, Elizabeth McCann, to walk you through the budget document. I oversee the areas of budget and finance, communications, information technology, community engagement, and then I'll also discuss the American Rescue Plan Act funds. So starting with our budget and finance department, their mission is to serve as the steward of our public funds and oversee the city's financial infrastructures by providing financial planning, financial operations, accounting, and budgetary services to all of our city departments. Of course, those of you that are here with us tonight know that this department prepares and monitors the city's budget and works with the finance committee throughout the year. But the budget and finance teams also handle a number of other critical functions for the city, including complex financial analysis, as well as timely collections of city revenues and payment of city obligations, including payroll and purchasing. This department also administers the city and urban renewal area investment and debt portfolios, manages our daily financial operations, oversees our annual external audit, and provides accounting services as well as other financial advisory services. So the proposed budget for this coming fiscal year begins implementation of this department's 3-year operational plan with the addition of 2 positions. The goal of the first year of our 3-year plan in budget and finance is to provide departments with budget development and monitoring support, as well as critical work to better develop the city's long-range financial forecasting. Key issues the budget and finance group will be tackling for this coming fiscal year include development and implementation of our long-term financial roadmap, updating the city's financial and purchasing policies with a focus on equity, continued COVID-19 recovery. So we will be seeking state and federal reimbursement for expenses, and we will be updating our utility assistance program as we recognize the continued impact of the pandemic on our residents. And then we will be supporting the organization's transition to the future through a continued ERP implementation, which is our enterprise resource planning system, and adapting to changes that come with remote work. So transitioning now to our communications department, their mission is that they are storytellers who engage with our community so that residents can make informed and balanced decisions that improve the city where we live, work, and play. This team celebrates Gresham. So communications manages the city's effort to provide the public with timely information. Strategic communication services include media relations, marketing, crisis communications, brand management, graphic design, video production, photography, web communication strategy, and social media. In this coming year, communications will be focusing on supporting critical council work plan projects with communications and marketing needs, which includes our long-term financial roadmap, housing and community safety efforts. We will continue to advance the city's use of digital communications tools and multimedia production, and we will ensure all audiences have accessible and timely access to city information via the platform of their choice. Moving on now to the Information Technology Department. As stewards of the city's technology, IT's mission is to provide comprehensive technology services and solutions that empower our partners to serve the residents of Gresham. Our IT team delivers services in a variety of areas that allows the city to provide efficient and effective services to the community. Services include our network systems, user support, applications management, collaborative tool sets, geographical information systems or GIS, analytics, data visualization, project management, and business process improvement. The proposed budget begins implementation of the department's 3-year operational plan with the addition of 2 positions. The goal of the first year of this 3-year plan is to more adequately provide technical support for computers and mobile devices through our help desk, which is the majority of staff's interaction with our IT department. A few key issues that IT will be tackling this coming fiscal year include transitioning our enterprise resource planning system, which covers our core financials, HR, and community services from a project to an ongoing program. In partnership with departments, we'll be developing a multi-year technology plan that aligns with the city's soon to be adopted strategic plan. And then we are continuing to replace outdated computers with a focus on a work anywhere, anytime model. For community engagement, we have the following program goals: to build and strengthen trust, create opportunities for inclusive and culturally relevant participation, to collaborate and inform decision-making, to build long-term capacity for civic engagement, to facilitate early and ongoing participation, and to communicate the vision and related benefits of the city's programs and services. So our community engagement division oversees the engagement of all of our residents, especially those who may be harder to reach. This division works to improve relationships in the community, build trust in government, support strong neighborhoods, and improve community outcomes through active participation in community problem solving. Over the last year, the team merged with the Neighborhoods Office and now also coordinates the city's Neighborhood Association program and other volunteer programs. In addition, this department manages the Gresham Arts Festival, Spirit of Gresham, and Gresham Lilac Run events. It's worth noting that these events rely heavily, or in the case of the Lilac Run, 100% on sponsorship contributions. The proposed budget begins implementation of this department's 3-year operational plan with the addition of 1 position. The goal of the first year of our 3-year plan is to better address the growing demand for community engagement with increased bilingual program support, digital engagement tools, and data and analytics. In the coming year, our engagement efforts will focus on exploring new tools and tactics to engage with our public with an equity focus, increasing cultural participation in city events to make them more inclusive, and continuing to grow and support our neighborhood associations. And finally, with the American Rescue Plan Act, our city manager, Nina Vetter, spoke about this earlier this evening, but the purpose of this act is to help communities respond and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. State and local governments receive money directly to fix budget shortfalls and invest in their communities. The city received a $12.7 million allocation in 2021 and will receive a second allocation of the same amount in 2022. In this coming fiscal year, we will continue to implement the allocations that have already been improved, including public safety support, homelessness programming, youth violence prevention, and our computer replacement project, among many others. And then we will assess our continued community and organizational needs and present our city council with options for allocating the remaining funds. And with that, I will turn it over to our budget manager, Elizabeth McCann.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good evening, I'm Elizabeth McCann, the city's budget manager. Tonight, I will be presenting an overview of the budget process and the technical portion of the 2022-23 proposed budget. Anyone who works closely with the budget process will tell you that it feels like a never-ending cycle. No sooner has the adoption process been completed than it's time to start updating forecasts and planning for the next budget year. Most of the proposal and planning process happens during the fall and winter months, and February to early March is when the city manager finalizes decisions regarding the proposed plans. March to early April is when budget staff finishes translating those decisions into numbers and ultimately end up in the proposed budget document. And that brings us to today. In the diagram shown, we are currently in the 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock section of the Budget Committee deliberations. After this phase, we will wrap up this budget cycle with council adoption and implementation. Oregon budget law prescribes certain mandatory steps for each phase of the budget development process. These steps are listed for the Budget Committee approval and City Council adoption phases. Tonight, you have heard the budget message. There will be an opportunity for public comment, and you will hold the state shared revenue hearing. Next week, you will take steps to approve the proposed budget and tax rate. Council will follow up with their steps in June by holding a state shared revenue hearing, adopting the budget, tax rate, and FTE count. Now we will move on to what you will see in the document itself, which will be available tonight on the city's website and in hard copy tomorrow. The primary framework of the city's budget are funds. Funds are a way to track revenue and how money is spent. Within each fund, you will find a resources section and a requirements section. By law, resources and requirements must be balanced in the budget for each fund. The requirements section of each fund is then broken down by departments and divisions to provide further tracking and management insights about how those resources are spent. As I mentioned, resources and requirements must be balanced, meaning that the city can't plan to spend more money than what they already have or will bring in for a fund. Resources are comprised of several components, including revenues, such as property taxes, charges for service, or intergovernmental agreements. These revenues can be ongoing, meaning that the city expects to receive them every year, such as property taxes, or they can be one-time, such as grants. The city of Gresham primarily receives a mix of ongoing and one-time resources. The proportion between the two is different for each fund. Another component of resources is beginning balance. This is the estimate of how much cash the fund will have at the beginning of the year left over from the prior year. On the requirements side, there are operating expenditures such as personnel and supplies, and then there are non-operating expenditures such as debt service. These operating expenditures are grouped in the funds by departments, such as police or fire. Contingency and unappropriated have specific definitions under budget law, but combined together are more commonly known as ending fund balance. Ending fund balance is a very important component of each fund because it is money set aside for future use. Every fund must have a certain level of fund balance to serve as working capital. For example, in the general fund, there is no significant revenue that arrives until November of each year, but the expenses start on July 1st of every year. So this fund balance makes sure that the city can pay all of its bills until new revenue for the year arrives. Ending fund balance can also be used to save for future large one-time expenditures used in the case of emergency within budget law rules, or can be used to fund ongoing operations. Since new ending fund balance is created by underspending resources, it should be considered one-time funding, and careful consideration should be taken when using it to fund ongoing expenses. The city has 37 funds, and it's reasonable to ask why so many. Funds are used when revenue comes with restrictions or there are special reporting requirements. This provides a way to ensure that resources are only used for eligible purposes. For example, charges for water service can only be used to maintain and operate the water system. So there is a water fund. Having separate funds allows for better reporting, accountability, and management, since the fund provides automatic segregation and tracking, which makes it easier to see how that program is performing and report on it. Much of the revenue the city receives can only be used for a very specific purpose. For example, grant funding is typically tied to a particular project or program. Gas taxes or system development charge revenues are limited by state statute. And water, stormwater, or wastewater utility rate revenue is dedicated to those functions. It is not allowable to take resources from one fund and pay for the expenses of another unrelated program. With having 37 different funds, sometimes it's easier to talk about groups of like funds. For budget purposes, we have used the 6 groupings that you see here. Another way budget data is often grouped is by department. Shown here, the city's operating departments. One note is that the city's management and reporting structure does not always align perfectly with the budget structure, but that's okay. The organization of the city can be reorganized as needed, but the budget structure is fixed for the year and often lags behind organizational changes. Departments can be mixed and matched with funds in a matrix style arrangement to accurately group expenditures across the city. Now for a quick overview of the budget document itself to help you navigate and locate particular types of information. The budget document has 10 chapters, but grouped into 4 major sections: the budget message, revenue information, expenditure information, and additional information. The budget message contains a message from the city manager regarding the proposed budget, provides major highlights of changes in the budget, and provides an overview and status of each of the funds. The revenue information section walks through each operating fund with a review and history of major revenues in the fund. The expenditure section starts with department narratives and then is broken down into chapters by the fund categories we just reviewed. Each of those chapters contains summary and detailed reports regarding the expenditures of the fund and departments, as well as explanations of significant changes in each of those combinations. Lastly, the additional information section includes information about staffing in the proposed budget, as well as a summary of the city's outstanding debt, interfund transfers, and financial management policies. To help you navigate the reports in the document, we have provided a sample fund report here. The top half of the report lists all the resources for the fund by category, with the last row being beginning balance. The lower half of the report is comprised of 2 sections: operating requirements listed by department and non-operating requirements. Examples of non-operating requirements are interfund transfers, which is moving dollars from one fund to another for specific support, such as the general fund sending funds to support planning. Contingency and unappropriated are also non-operating categories. Not all funds have operating expenses, such as the capital or debt service funds. Across the top of the page, there are 6 columns. The first and second columns are actual revenues and expenditures from the 2 prior years that have been audited. The third column is the revised budget for the year before the one being considered. And then the 3 right columns record the 3 phases of the budget process that will be considered for next year. The last two columns will be populated after the completion of each of those steps. There are a few reports in the document that only contain 4 columns of data, but those will align with the 4 right-hand columns of this report. In addition to the proposed document, you will receive several supplemental materials. The Internal Service Charge Manual provides details regarding methodologies and allocations used in distributing support charges to operating departments. The Finance Plan Manual for Utilities and Transportation provides an overview of the finance plans and the manner that they are used to support the management of water, stormwater, wastewater, and transportation. And finally, the Capital Improvement Program information handout provides information on the projects included in the CIP, including an overview, funding sources, and a 5-year view. All of these items are released at the same time as the proposed budget document each year. So on to the budget itself. This year's proposed budget totals $731.6 million with an operating budget of $269.3 million. As noted in the budget highlights and comparison section of the budget message, after adjusting for duplications and certain grants or pass-through items, the operating budget this year increased 10.5% from the fiscal year 21-22 revised budget. The next few slides will provide a high-level summary of each fund group. Additional details for each fund can be found in the budget document in the chapter for that group. The general fund is the city's primary operating fund. Major revenues include property taxes, utility license fees, police, fire, and parks fee revenue, and revenue shared from the county for the business income tax. In total, the general fund expects to receive approximately $84.9 million for fiscal year 22-23. More details about the individual revenue sources can be found in the revenue chapter of the proposed budget document. The General and Police Fire Parks Fund as a whole is the city's largest operating fund. It contains the primary operating budgets of police and fire, as well as parks and some of the programs included in economic and development and community services. Police and fire services make up a large majority of the city's general fund. Approximately 90% of this fund is public safety related. That means that the primary expenditures in this fund are personnel related, but also include related expenses such as emergency dispatch services and equipment purchases. Unlike other funds in the city, many of the sources of revenue for this fund don't tie directly to the specific services provided, such as property taxes or state shared revenue. This creates a unique situation where demand for services do not have a direct correlation with revenue levels. Just one item to note, while planning services are budgeted in Urban Design and Planning Fund, they are partially supported by a transfer from the general fund. Business funds are specialized programs with the intent on being mostly or entirely self-supporting through the fees that they collect. As a whole, the business funds have a proposed operating budget of $13.6 million. The majority of expenditures in these funds are personnel costs, like the general fund. As mentioned previously, urban design and planning is also supported by the general fund for comprehensive planning services. In particular, these funds are aligned closely with economic cycles, and revenues can fluctuate significantly over time, particularly for the urban design and planning and building funds. The Gresham Redevelopment Commission contracts with the city for its operations. And outside of capital and debt service activity, the Urban Renewal Support Fund contains the operating activities of urban renewal. Infrastructure funds account for activities related to the large city-owned systems such as roads or water systems. For these funds, the primary expenses tend to be related to the facilities themselves, the cost to build, maintain, operate, repair or replace pipes, reservoirs, and pump stations, and such. Unlike most of the other operating funds in the city, personnel costs are not the primary expense. In financial planning and forecasting for these funds, it is important to be very long-term focused. The infrastructure may last 50 to 75 years in some cases, and it is critical to ensure that it is maintained and replaced as needed, as Steve talked about earlier this evening. In total, the infrastructure funds have a proposed operating budget of $56.7 million. Central support funds contain internal services that provide support to the services referenced on the previous slides. These are the internal business workings of the city, including city manager's office, HR, budget and finance, fleet operations, and information technology, to name a few. The primary expenses for the three funds on top, administrative services, legal services, and fleet and facilities funds, is personnel related, but the specific programs can also have substantial materials and services expenditures, such as parts and fuel for fleet operations or software costs for IT. These three funds have a total proposed budget of $30.3 million. The primary expenses for the health and dental and workers' comp and liability funds are claims and insurance premiums with a total proposed budget of $18.8 million, while the primary expenses for the equipment replacement fund are vehicle and equipment purchases. The equipment replacement fund proposed budget is $13.7 million for fiscal year 22-23, most of which is related to planned purchases. But over the last several years, due to COVID-related delays and long manufacturing times, many of these items have had to be rebudgeted in 22-23 pending delivery dates. The expense of these programs is allocated out to the various funds from the previous slide based on usage or allocation methodologies. That more details about that can be found in the internal service charge manual that you will receive. We have two types of capital funds. The first type, which includes most of the funds, are also represented in the city's 5-year capital improvement program. These funds allow for the tracking of large infrastructure construction projects, including pipe repair and replacement, reservoir construction, wastewater treatment plant upgrades, and street improvements. The 5-year CIP is updated annually and is closely coordinated with the budget process. The second type of capital fund is not captured in the city's 5-year CIP, but includes the facilities capital and enterprise system replacement funds. These funds are used to track large capital and replacement projects related to those subjects, such as the ERP replacement over the last couple years. The last category is special revenue and non-operating funds. Here we have special revenues. These are funds with very specific purposes, such as tracking donations or grants, and are housed in an isolated fund, such as the designated purpose or CDBG home fund. For fiscal year 22-23, the designated purpose fund is substantially larger than typical, primarily due to the American Rescue Plan Act funding and the Metro Housing Bond funds. Not shown on this slide is the System Development Charge Fund. This fund is used to bring the revenue from SDCs into a single clearinghouse type fund to ensure better tracking and accountability. Those funds are then transferred when they are actually used, either to an appropriate capital fund or for certain grants to an operating fund. The final part of the non-operating funds are debt service funds and serve as a clearinghouse for debt payments. We handle these in separate funds in order to better account for debt payments and ensure that we are meeting all bond covenant and other associated requirements. The payments from these funds are funded via transfers from operating funds. Lastly, wanted to cover our staffing levels quickly. This slide contains a several-year history of budgeted staffing levels. For the fiscal year, as mentioned earlier tonight, new positions are being proposed in order to support service delivery. In addition, the budget also reflects positions being funded through ARPA for approved projects. Not counting the ARPA funded positions, this staffing level is still slightly lower than what was budgeted in fiscal year 2019-20. And for that is my portion of the presentation. And Chair Allen, I would like to turn it back over to you to continue the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the state shared revenue hearing. This public hearing is to comply with ORS 221.770. The hearing is to allow comment regarding the use of state shared revenue in Gresham's 22-23 budget. Holding the hearing is required in order for the city to participate in the distribution of state shared revenue. The proposed use of state shared revenue is to receipt $3,448,000 into the general fund in support of services provided to the community. The public hearing is now open to receive comment from persons who signed up to provide testimony on the proposed use of state shared revenue in fiscal year 22-23. All persons who wish to speak may present their testimony. Please remember to limit your comments to 3 minutes and focus your comments specifically to the city's proposed use of state shared revenue. Do we have members of the public who wish to testify specifically on the proposed use of state shared revenue?
Chair Allen, we do not have anyone signed up for that this evening. Thank you.
Okay, so as no requests were received to submit comments specific to the state shared revenue hearing, the hearing will now be continued or closed. Raise your hand if you wish to close the hearing.
I think we have everybody there, Chair.
Okay. There is a consensus. The hearing is now closed. That concludes the required Budget Committee step regarding the receipt of state shared revenue. So we now move on to the agenda for community comment on the proposed budget for the fiscal year 22-23. Individuals were provided options to sign up for oral or written testimony 24 hours prior to the meeting. At this time, Sharon will now call on individuals who have signed up to testify. Please remember to limit your comments to 3 minutes and focus your comments specifically to the city's proposed budget for fiscal year 22-23.
Thank you, Chair Allen. Our city recorder, Susan Joy Wright, has let us know that there were no signups for public comment this evening.
Okay. We will now open up the meeting for committee discussion. Are there Budget Committee members who have comments or questions regarding topics presented tonight?
I see Councilor Danucci has a hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sharon. Just a quick question. this year, I know there are many projections about inflation going up quite a bit. And I know that our budget process takes a long time. How does that factor in when we start seeing signs of that this far into the process? Are there ways to account for that as we go, or has it already been accounted and reflected?
Councilor Danucci, Chair on Committee, that is an excellent question. And that is absolutely one of the challenges that we really do have to work through each year, as we are forecasting many, many months in advance. And so it's really important to try to look at those sorts of trends to understand, is it something that just happens to be looking really important during the week or two that you're really focusing on that projection, or is it something that you are expecting to be a long-term trend? So that is absolutely at the heart of a lot of the financial forecasting that we do, is trying to understand, are these things that are national trends, state trends, local trends? How does Gresham behave differently than Portland may, for example? And so Elizabeth and several others really do dive into exactly those kind of topics. Where we have certain items that are really under strong consideration right now, for example, fuel would be one that I would definitely flag as something that we've looked at closely, and did put an increase in the budget related to fuel. We also include a contingency, so that is one of the key reasons why you have a contingency, is to be able to come back should you have to do something to increase that budget, because obviously fuel is something that is critical to our ability to provide service. So where we can, we do focus on having that contingency. It's important to not over budget and over assume for some inflationary things as well, though, because then that can actually prevent you from being able to do needed work. So certainly we have been looking very closely at personnel costs, at materials and expenses related to anything like asphalt and some of those kind of materials, as well as vehicle purchases. And Elizabeth mentioned the equipment replacement and the fact that we have had to carry over a lot of funds there because of the delay that we've been seeing. We've also seen increases in the cost of many of those kind of very key functions. So a long way of saying, we definitely think about it. We definitely look at it closely. There's not a perfect answer, but we do allow for contingency and do have some additional options related to a supplemental budget should we have to in certain areas. But that is one of the reasons why you want to retain some of that fund balance as well, so that you have an ability to respond.
Thank you. And I should have actually started by saying my compliments to all the presenters tonight. This was amazing. It was very complete. And it made me feel really good about the things that we're focused on and how we're going forward. So I appreciate all the information tonight.
Anyone else with questions or comments? Councillor Gladfelter.
Thank you so much, Chair. Well, I just would like to say thank you to everyone. A lot of information. And in one of our meetings, Councilor Danucci just brought up something, and then I think you just mentioned the equipment replacement fund. In one of our meetings that we've had recently, which there's been a lot, it seems, I can't seem to place the number in my mind. What was that number that for 1 year that you're gonna not put in there? What does that dollar amount represent? I can't remember. Sorry.
One moment while I pull it out.
And I will confess, we do not have those numbers right off the top of our head at the moment either. So Elizabeth will be looking that up. That is specific to the general fund, I do want to point out. So all of the other funds that are purchasing large equipment are still making that transfer. And the expectation is that the general fund often does have a fair amount of turn back as they have vacancies and those sorts of things. So we do intend to continue to evaluate that and expect that we would be able to make that transfer at the end of the fiscal year. But if we budget for it up front, then we are preventing some actions that those departments really do need to take. So it is a little bit of a strategic way of approaching it in a way that doesn't restrict some immediate actions that we need.
Well, I thank you for thinking out of the box.
The amount for the current year that the general fund is scheduled to transfer to the equipment replacement is 2.2 million. So for fiscal year 22-23, it would be slightly larger than that just due to natural inflation. But that's the range of what we're talking.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Councillor Vincent Jones-Dixon.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. I was just looking back at some of the screenshots that I made. I noticed that there was one slide on police for just on the budgets and for the budget. Was there one on fire as well?
Yes, there would have been one about 2 slides ahead of that, I believe.
I think I missed it. Okay, great. Thank you.
A copy of that presentation will be included with your budget document for your reference.
Great. Thank you. Thank you both.
Council DiNucci again, please.
I know, I'm sorry, again, only because in all of my thanks, I didn't thank our budget committee, who I know has worked so hard in coming through this and working to do this. So just wanted to give my thanks to you as well. And that's it.
Okay, at this time then, the committee is scheduled to recess until next week. Before we do, is there any additional information that staff needs to provide to the committee?
Thank you, Chair. I do want to say that all materials will be posted online shortly. We are working through the last steps of that process. And for committee members, we will have hard copies available for you tomorrow. I don't quite have the time threshold of when those might be ready. I would say if we want to assume that they will be closer to noon, that would be definitely preferred and give us a little more chance to get the final printing done there. Certainly, if you are able to come to City Hall and pick those up, that would be great. If you are not able to and need to make some alternate arrangements, please just let me know and we will certainly do so. The other reminder, as always, is just consistent with Oregon budget law. We do need to refrain from having any separate discussions or lobbying outside of the public meetings. So if you do have questions as you go through your materials, please coordinate those through me so that we can combine responses and share those with the entire group. Certainly that is something that I think worked very well last year of having that consolidated list of questions. So certainly if you do come up with questions, if we can coordinate the response, that is much appreciated. And then we can make sure that we address those with the full committee. Those are the things I needed to point out. Elizabeth, did you have anything else that I forgot to add to that list?
No, that is it. Other than the next meeting, which I believe Chair Allen has that information.
At this point, do I have a motion to recess the fiscal year 22-23 budget committee until 6 p.m. on Thursday, April 28th, 2022?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion made by, and I don't know who it was by voice.
Believe that was Mayor Stovall.
Okay, by
Yes, it
Mayor
was.
Stovall. That was seconded by,
Counselor Vincent Jones Dixon, I believe.
That's correct.
to recess the Budget Committee meeting for fiscal year 22-23 until Thursday, April 28th, 2022. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay, then we'll have a call for the vote. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
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 I believe you have everyone, Chair.
Okay, motion to recess the proposed budget meeting for fiscal year 22-23 until Thursday, April 28th, 2022 passes. The meeting is recessed until 6 p.m. on Thursday, April 28th, 2022.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.